Glastonbury. What's the big deal? What is it? Where is it? Why is it? Glastonbury. It's on the TV a lot at the moment. There's a lot about the history of Glastonbury, where it is, what's going on. So what is Glastonbury? Okay, so welcome to English with Paul, English podcast with Paul, where I just talk naturally, natively, unscripted, unedited about things in topics that I'm interested in or topics that you're interested in. And it's not a lesson, it's just us talking naturally and normally. Sometimes we have interviews, sometimes we read a book or discussions, and today it's about what's in the news. And in the news at the moment is Glastonbury. So, as I was saying, what is it? What's the big deal? Okay, so this is not scripted, this is not edited, but I do have some notes, all right? I want to seem like we know what we're talking about here. I've done a little bit of research. So you'll see me reading a little bit, but that's just some of the research notes, so I can be more factual and have some evidence. And so you can understand what we're talking about, and I can give it some details. All right, okay. So it's a big music festival over 5 days. What else is it? Apparently it's the biggest festival in Europe and biggest greenfield festival in the world. Okay, that sounds pretty impressive, doesn't it? Biggest greenfield festival in the world. I just assume that means on grass. Okay, you can't always assume, because if you take assume, it makes an ass out of you and me. Like what I did there? Assume. Okay, sorry about that. All right. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome back to another English podcast with Paul. I did actually just write that. I just read it. Okay, I said all that bit, yeah, unnatural. It's just to remind me, if anything, because sometimes I forget and we get waylaid and we go off on a tangent, we digress. So what else have we got here? Okay, so there's the Glastonbury, the festival, the town, the history, the mythology. Mythology. And the people and the landscape. Right. So crank up the dial, put your headphones on, start doing your chores or whatever it is you got to do, and then just listen to me talk for the next half an hour. Right. Okay, let's go. The iconic festival apparently started in the 1970s by Michael Avis. I apologise if I said his name wrong. Michael Avis. Allegedly, it was after he came back from a concert in Bath. I think it was The Who. And it was a free concert. He was inspired. Obviously, he had a farm, and it just grew from there. Some years, they didn't have the festival. He had a lot of issues with neighbours and other people in the town because of the disturbance and the commotion it causes for everybody else. So some years it didn't take place, and they call that fallow years, as in a fallow field, empty field. So they had fallow years. All right. Lots of different types of music at the festival, and there's other arts and crafts. There's comedy, there's theatre, all sorts of things, all right? Lots and lots of different things going on. And this site is huge. It's, I can't remember, something like 120,000 acres. It is a really, really big site. And I think also going on what we said earlier about records and numbers and how big it is, I think it's the biggest reoccurring temporary city. The amount of people that come to this place. So normally I think the village would have maybe 15, 20,000 people maximum. But then when the festival is on, it just becomes gigantic. So it's around 200,000 people. 200,000. The biggest ever from what I can remember, was 300,000. I think that's when the Levelers were playing in 1994, the Levelers. 300,000 people. That's crazy. That's a lot of people. But the maximum, because of regulations and fire regulations to do their permit or their licensing, I think is 220,000 people. Obviously, that's made up out of volunteers and staff and workers and crew, as well as the paying guests. Right, what else go? Biggest artists in the world. Yeah, some of the biggest artists in the world. So this year there was Elton John, there was Guns N' Roses, and I think something like Arctic Monkeys, somebody else like that. But Dave Grohl was there. Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. So yeah, lots and lots of big artists. And it's not just rock and roll and heavy sort of music. There's all sorts of dance music going on, and rhythm and blues and folk music, like every genre you can think of. Really, really interesting. All right. I said about the statistics. Oh, there's 100 stages. But then I heard on the BBC, when I watched a little bit on TV, there was only 60 stages. Somebody might have the wires crossed. Probably me. I'd imagine the BBC has the correct number of stages. So you've really got to work out an itinerary of where you want to go for what artists. But it's such a big site, it takes a long time to get from one side to the other. And the amount of crowds of people in the middle would really impact your decision on whether you want to go all the way over that field to see this artist, maybe for a few songs, and then come all the way back for another artist. I also heard the cheapest pint of beer, because English people love drinking beer. Not me, but most English people love drinking beer. Was £6.50. So that would be around the same in euros, €6.50. And then I guess in American dollars, that would be something like about just under $9. Yeah, just under $9. So that's a lot of money for a pint of beer. All right. There's a lot of volunteers. I think it's one of the biggest shows where there's a large amount of volunteers in one place. And the volunteers are normally brought in groups through charities. So like Oxfam or Water Aid and things like that. So these charities really have a big connection with the festival. And so this Michael Avis has really been big on sustainability, especially this year. Sustainability, recycling, and lots of other good practices. And many of these are copied and emulated throughout other festivals, you know. It's good practice for other festivals to mimic and copy these practices of reducing waste as much as possible and recycling. And I'm pretty sure there's also a lot of other electricity, like carbon footprint reduction. So solar panels for electricity and probably wind turbines, things like this. So there's a lot to go into it in regards to eco-credentials. Right, said about that in the city. What else do we got? So my wife was telling me that it was locally known as Pilton Pop Festival back in the day. So my wife went there probably in the 80s, early 80s, something like that, maybe late 80s, and it was just the Pilton Pop Festival, because where they actually have the festival is a few miles outside of Glastonbury, in a smaller village called Pilton. Pilton Pop Festival. Interesting, huh? So my wife is from the area, and although I'm fairly local myself, you know, the same county, I've never actually been to the festival. I've been to a few other festivals, but I've never been to Glastonbury Festival. My wife has been many times. Anyway, and I'm the one that's more hippie than she is. Okay, all right. What else have we got here? It's not just the music that makes it special. We talked about sustainability, social causes. That there's a lot of good social causes that is highlighted through the festival. So it's doing a lot of good work for not just charities but other good causes. So it really gets a lot of praise for that in publications and in press and from people in general. Yeah, a lot of good initiatives. So one of them, for example, is called Love the Farm, Leave No Trace. So I think a previous year, 2,000 volunteers stayed behind, or 2,000 people, sorry, not volunteers, 2,000 people stayed behind, paying people to help pick up litter and leave all the fields clean and tidy. So that's quite impressive. There's not any, I mean, English people aren't very good at volunteering for things, English people aren't known for being very generous with their time. So for 2,000 people to stay and pick up litter, even though they bought a ticket, is really good. It's really positive that these people have this behavior, yeah. Okay, right, what else we got? And apparently is eco-friendly practices, 82% of festival waste was recycled. That's a lot. 82% of the waste recycled. Wow. Obviously they're known for having compost toilets and things like that as well. All right, so the town has very deep-rooted history. Some believe the chalice cup that apparently Jesus used for the Last Supper is in Glastonbury. And there's a chaliced well that is a water well called the Chalice Well. There's actually 3 in around Glastonbury, 3 wells. There's even a pub called the 3 Wells. One is hard to find. The other is on the outskirts, which Sue and I have used to get water. And another is in Glastonbury itself, Glastonbury Well. And I don't actually like the water from that well, but there's another story. Yeah, right, 3 different wells. Right, what else? So yeah, also King Arthur and Lady Guinevere, that's it, Lady Guinevere. There's the old folk story of King Arthur and Lady Guinevere that was buried in Glastonbury area somewhere. Okay. The town has a natural spring, I've mentioned that. The tour, for these who do not know. So Glastonbury also has a tour. So the topography of most of Somerset is pretty flat, pretty low level, below the sea. So we have Glastonbury levels or Somerset levels. But the tour is a really big hill. All right, so there's also on the outskirts a mump. So there must be different acknowledgements or recognitions of a hill, a mump, and a tor, and then maybe small mountain. So a tor is a little bit of a climb. Maybe grandma won't get up there, unless she's really fit. But your average walker, your average young person can get up to this tor. And so Glastonbury has this tor, and on top of the tor is what's left is the tower. And it's quite famous because this tower has different history depending on who you talk to. So some people say the tower was based on the beginnings of Christianity. And not that long ago, actually, people were hung on in this tower, for heinous crimes. So, and that was allegedly based on Christianity. But there is a story and an idea that before that, it was pagan and druids. It was like pagan ground. Because they also believe that the tor is connected via ley lines, which are, I don't know how to describe ley lines. They are mystical lines around the earth, and specifically around the UK, we have famous ley lines from Stonehenge all the way over to Glastonbury. And then from Glastonbury, it goes on to other places, including Totnes. I think some of these places were famous for pagan rituals and things like this. So we have the Tor, we have the Christianity, we have paganism, we have ley lines, we have wells. So quite a lot of mystery, quite a lot of history. History, mystery, that rhymes. Right, okay. Also, there's kind of like a path around the Tor, but the path is kind of like on different levels, and so they say it's like terraces. And it's estimated that these terraces around the Tor were built at the same time as Stonehenge. So what was that? Quite a few thousand years ago. All right. Stonehenge, yeah. Apparently it was also a medieval fort. That would make sense, really, right? Being on top of a really big hill, you can see all around. That would make a really good fort, and for viewing, you know, to see your enemy coming. That would make sense as a strategic point and place to have a lookout tower. At the very least, a lookout tower would be very logical there, because it's so high up. And the rest of the land is quite flat, like I said, Somerset levels. All right, ruined church. And in the town as well, there's the remnants of an abbey, because the abbeys were all sort of torn down and ripped down. There's a little bit of remnants, ruins left of the abbey. Okay. I shouldn't laugh, but there's a lot of interesting characters in Glastonbury. A lot of people that seem to have interesting ideas and philosophies of life. So very colourful, very bohemian lifestyles. Makes it an interesting place, but yeah, we'll come back to this. So there's a lot of shops that sell crystals and incense and dream catchers. And if you don't know what a dream catcher is, it is kind of like twigs made into a circle and then tied up with wool or with other string. And then often there's feathers and things like that inside. Some say they come from the Native American Indians, and they have feathers hanging down them. And they're called a dream catcher. So these shops sell crystals, they sell stones and gems and dream catchers. Often they'll sell other things that are unusual, you know, maybe mythological creatures, interesting things like that. All right, so there's a real strange kind of bohemian attitude and shops in Glastonbury. All right, I said it's collected. Another thing with Glastonbury that you don't see very often, but unless you're really looking for it, is droves. So there's the term cattle droves that you'll hear in Australia, but even here in England, before the main roads and highways were built, we had these droves where you'd move cattle, maybe all your cows or sheep, from one town to the next. And for some reason they got this name droves, and there seems to be some local bylaw or some government law where you are legally allowed to stop on the drove. And this has been for hundreds of years. So whether you say those laws are antiquated and no longer used is another story. Often you'll see people parked up along these roads. Sometimes they go a little bit too far, in my opinion, and they might camp there for 2 weeks or even a year, or live there forever, which upsets a lot of the locals. So these things are called droves. They have some old legislation or bylaws to say that you can go down these roads. They're often tarmacked. And also there are some spaces of land that is set aside, maybe like a small car park for resting of your droves. So if you're going down with a herd of cattle or sheep, then you can rest for the night in this resting space. It seems that is a bygone era, and that doesn't really happen anymore. But still, you find a lot of camper vans, or even a caravan or a shack on the side of a road of this drove. So it's interesting terminology, and interesting if you get involved with legalese, the legal aspects of whether or not you can stay there or not. It's a contentious issue. So the reason I mention this is because there are many bohemian characters in and around Glastonbury. Some of these characters, some of these people live full-time on the land, and I'm pretty sure they don't pay rent, because this drove would be like common land. There's not really any common land left in the UK where you could have your cattle. As far as I'm aware, maybe people feel that they can live on this common land rent-free, tax-free, and everything else. And I agree. You should be able to live that way. I personally live that way. I don't pay rent. And in Glastonbury, there are, like I said, bohemian characters that take this quite a long way, and they kind of spread out with their belongings, and it doesn't look very attractive. So I think they're making things difficult. They're making a rod for their own back with the local community and the people that live there. Okay, let's move on. Rights of way, yes. They decide to take up residency. Yeah, all right. Train. I think there used to be a train station there, yeah. A vibrant place for sure is charming because it doesn't have a train station. Sorry. Yeah, there's no train station in Glastonbury. Surprisingly, you would think it would have. It's a reasonable size compared to other villages in Somerset. And there's no other major high street franchise shops. I think there's a small Boots chemist, but otherwise there's no real big commercial shopping area in Glastonbury itself. It's quite a long drive as well to the main road, to the motorway, or even to an airport. It's a good old drive. Let me know what you think about ley lines and King Arthur, some of these mythological things. Because even if you don't want to believe in ley lines, there are other things that are mystical and difficult to understand. And they are like divining rods. That's a whole subject there, is where you're holding this branch that is joined, and you walk around until it moves in your hand like this, up or down. And then apparently there is water. You can go left or right and get closer to the source of the water. And that's called divining rods and divining. Very interesting, very interesting. Right, so that's it really. That's it of my notes. Yeah, Glastonbury, what an unusual place. Not just for the music festival, or Pilton Pop Festival as it used to be called, and all the big acts that go there. Also the interesting characters. I mean, let me know in the comments, is there a town or a place near you that is very bohemian? Lots of interesting, strange characters. So you have the festival, you have the characters and the bohemian lifestyle, you have the tour itself, and you have all the mystery and mythology that goes with that. Makes Glastonbury a very unusual place. If you've ever visited Glastonbury, or you have friends that live in Glastonbury, or you just like the topography or the people, then mention something in the comments below. That would be really interesting. But for now, that's it, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good weekend, and I hope you enjoy Glastonbury Festival on TV. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Thank you very much. And don't forget, secondclasshobos.com, or for more about my wife and I and our adventures, or if you want to listen to more podcasts, you can obviously see us on YouTube. And now we have a website which is called englishpodcastwithpaul.com. How interesting is that? All right. That's enough of me talking and yabbering on. If you want to say hello, feel free to message us on there as well. All right. There's lots of resources and free things for everybody to share. And for you to put your comments on as well. Maybe you want me to discuss a particular topic. So mention it in the comments or put it on the website. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care. See you again. Bye-bye for now.